There's a tiny cop inside your head. The one that starts frantically screaming when you see someone do something weird. You've spent your whole life afraid of setting him off. Well, today, we're firing him. This is 101 things you were sure would land you in jail, but actually won't. 1. Driving with the interior dome light on. This is the original sin of every American childhood. Your parents swore that flipping that switch would summon a police escort and cause commercial airliners to fall from the sky. The truth? It's not illegal. It just ruined their night vision for seeing how disappointed they were in you. 2. Flipping off a police officer. Believe it or not, this is considered protected speech under the First Amendment. Is it a good idea? Absolutely not. It's your constitutional right to instantly volunteer for every random traffic stop and equipment check for the rest of your life. 3. Owning a military-grade flamethrower. I wish I were joking. In most states, you can legally buy a device that shoots fire 50 feet. It's federally classified as a tool, not a firearm. A tool for what? Declaring war on your garden weeds? Winning the neighborhood cook-off? Yes. 4. Eating roadkill. In more than 30 states, if you see a freshly flattened deer on the highway, you can legally take it home for dinner. It's the ultimate expression of farm-to-table dining, except the farm is Interstate 95 and the table has tire marks. 5. Not tipping your server. This is not a crime. You will not be arrested, but it is a direct violation of the unwritten social contract, and it instantly makes you the villain in everyone's story. It's your constitutional right to be a genuinely terrible person. 6. Walking barefoot into a grocery store. The police couldn't care less about your hobbit feet. That no shoes, no service sign is a store policy, not a state law. You won't get arrested, but you might get escorted out by a manager who's seen way too much. 7. Riding in the back of a moving pickup truck. In many states, this is a perfectly legal way to travel. It's a cherished American tradition of treating your friends like unsecured luggage and testing the limits of physics every time you hit a pothole. Safety is merely a suggestion. 8. Counting cards at a casino. Hollywood lied to you. This is not an imprisonable offense. The FBI is not going to storm the blackjack table. However, a very large man named Tiny will politely ask you to leave and then invite you to never, ever come back. 9. Building a spite fence. Got a neighbor you despise? In many places, you can legally build an obscenely tall, ugly fence for the sole purpose of blocking their sunlight and ruining their view. It's not just home improvement. It's a beautiful monument to pure pettiness. 10. Collecting rainwater. There's a bizarrely persistent myth that the government owns the clouds and you're stealing from them. In reality, you can collect all the sky juice you want. Your HOA might have a problem with it, but the feds don't care about your dystopian water farm. 11. Quitting your job with no notice. That 2-week notice is nothing more than a professional courtesy. Unless you signed a contract, you can legally stand on your desk, announce your departure, and walk out forever. You'll burn the bridge, but you won't be doing it from a jail cell. 12. Living in your car. As long as you're not breaking parking rules or setting up a meth lab in the back seat, the act of using your Honda Civic as a studio apartment isn't illegal. It's not homelessness. It's just mobile living on a very tight budget. 13. Owning an alligator. In states like Florida, you can legally own a pet alligator with a proper permit. It's the perfect pet for someone who wants a living creature that hasn't changed much in 8 million years and sees every other living thing, including you, as a potential meal. You're not just a pet owner. You're a zookeeper with questionable life choices. 14. Marrying your first cousin. This sounds like a punchline to a joke, but in about half of US states, this is completely legal. It certainly makes family reunions efficient. You can keep the bloodline pure, just maybe don't brag about it. 15. Openly carrying a sword in public. In states like Texas and Montana, you can literally walk through Walmart with a broadsword strapped to your back like you're on your way to slay a dragon in aisle 5. You're not breaking the law. You're just making everyone else very, very nervous. 16. Marrying an object. Yes, in some parts of the US, you can hold a ceremony to marry an inanimate object. While it's not a legally binding marriage in the eyes of the IRS, You can declare your undying love for a brick or your favorite lamp. The law won't stop you, but your family might schedule an intervention. 17. Paying for something entirely in pennies. Yes, it's legal tender. You can absolutely pay for your $40 grocery bill with 4,000 pennies. You won't be arrested for it, but you will achieve legendary status as the most hated customer of the day, possibly of the year. 18. Refusing to show your receipt when leaving a store. Unless they have reasonable suspicion that you're a thief, that employee at the door has no legal authority to detain you. You can just say no thanks and keep walking. It's your constitutional right to give a minimum wage employee a tiny existential crisis. 19. Blasting music from your car at a stoplight. While some cities have specific noise ordinances, just annoying everyone within a 50-foot radius with your terrible taste in music is usually not illegal. It's just a public service announcement that you peaked in high school. 20. Yelling fire in a crowded theater. This is the classic example everyone thinks is illegal, but the Supreme Court case about it was overturned. It only becomes a crime if it actually causes a dangerous panic. So legally, you can do it. You'll just be the person everyone secretly hopes gets hit by a bus on the way home. 21. Homeschooling your kids. To some of your neighbors, this looks like a polite form of kidnapping. But not sending your children to a public school isn't illegal. It's a legally protected choice in all 50 states. It's the ultimate way to avoid bake sales and awkward parent-teacher conferences forever. 22. Recording a conversation you are a part of. It feels super illegal, like you're a spy in a cheap thriller. But in the majority of US states, only one party needs to consent to the recording. And that one party can be you. It's not paranoia. It's just creating your own personal meeting minutes. 23. Flashing your headlights to warn other drivers of a speed trap. This feels like betraying the police and siding with the enemy. But courts in many states have ruled it's protected free speech. It's the universal language of the road, a small act of rebellion that says, "I've got your back, fellow leadfoot." 24. Letting your lawn become a jungle. While your HOA might send you passive-aggressive letters that threaten total annihilation, in many places, there's no actual law forcing you to mow your lawn. You're not breaking the law. You're just running a wildlife sanctuary for disgruntled gnomes. 25. Driving slowly in the left lane. This should be a crime punishable by eternal damnation, but it usually isn't. At worst, it's a minor traffic ticket in some states. For the most part, it's a perfectly legal way to audition for the role of America's most hated driver. 26. Creating and selling your own perfume. It feels like a highly regulated industry reserved for giant corporations. But you can legally mix your own scents and sell them. You're not a chemist. You're just an artisan perfumer whose signature scent might smell suspiciously like vanilla extract and regret. 27. Not having a bank account. Living a cash-only life sounds like something you do when you're on the run, but it's completely legal to be unbanked. You're not a fugitive. You're just a time traveler from an era before overdraft fees and two-factor authentication. 28. Having chickens in your suburban backyard. This feels like it should be reserved for actual farms, not a cul-de-sac. But many cities now allow you to keep a small flock. It's a great way to get fresh eggs and to discover exactly how early a rooster thinks the day should start. 29. Being drunk in public. The crime isn't being drunk, it's being a disorderly drunk. Simply walking home after one too many margaritas is often not illegal. The line is crossed when you decide to start arguing with a mailbox or singing show tunes to stray cats. 30. Selling your own hair. It sounds creepy and vaguely like a plot point in a Victorian novel, but it's a completely legal and surprisingly lucrative market. It's one of the few side hustles where you can literally make money by sitting there and doing nothing. 31. Getting extreme plastic surgery to look like an animal or a fictional character. While a reputable surgeon might refuse, there's no law stopping you from transforming yourself into a cat person or a real-life elf. You're not breaking the law, you're just making future family photos incredibly awkward. 32. Taking a shortcut across a vacant lot with a no trespassing sign. This feels like a small, thrilling act of rebellion every single time. but criminal trespassing usually requires ignoring a direct warning or hopping a fence. That sign isn't a legal barrier, it's just a strongly worded suggestion from someone who hates efficiency. 33. Stuffing your pockets with condiment packets from a fast food joint. We've all done it, and we've all felt a tiny pang of guilt, as if a ketchup SWAT team is about to rappel through the ceiling. But they expect you to take them. You're not stealing, you're just curating a personal sauce library. 34. Growing your own marijuana. With the legal mess of state versus federal laws, it's no wonder people are confused. But in an increasing number of states, growing a few plants for personal use is as legal as growing tomatoes. You're not a drug lord, you're just a botanist. 35. Taking photos or videos of people in a public place. It feels like the ultimate violation, a one-way ticket to a lawsuit or a fistfight. But in public spaces, where there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, you are generally free to film or photograph whatever you can see. You're not a creep, you're just an amateur documentarian capturing life as it happens. 36. Driving a hearse as your daily vehicle. It feels profoundly wrong, like you're breaking some sacred rule of the road. But legally, it's just a station wagon with a creepy history. You can register it, insure it, and take it through the McDonald's drive-thru. You're not breaking the law, you're just guaranteeing you'll never have to carpool. 37. Setting off an insane amount of fireworks on the 4th of July. In many places, this is not only legal but a sacred civic duty. You're not disturbing the peace. You're participating in a neighborhood-wide arms race to see who can best simulate a small-scale artillery barrage. 38. Cursing in public. As long as you're not screaming threats directly at someone, your right to use colorful language is generally protected. So you can drop an F-bomb when you stub your toe. You're not a criminal. You're just adding a little spice to the public discourse. 39. Refusing to answer a police officer's questions. You have the right to remain silent, and it's not just for when you're under arrest. You can politely state that you do not wish to answer any questions. It won't make you popular, but it's a far better strategy than accidentally talking your way into trouble. 40. A dog barking endlessly. Every sleep-deprived neighbor is convinced they can call the police after the third woof. But a dog being annoying isn't a crime. It usually has to be persistent for hours to be a legal nuisance. Until then, it's just your neighbor's furry, four-legged car alarm that's permanently going off. 41. Driving a decommissioned military tank on public roads. This sounds like something you can only do in a video game. But if it's been demilitarized and made street legal, you can absolutely own one. It's the perfect vehicle for grocery runs and for intimidating everyone at the PTA meeting. 42. Returning clothes you've already worn once. It's called wardrobing, and it feels like a felony-level scam. But as long as the store's return policy doesn't forbid it, it's not illegal. You're not a criminal. You're just enjoying fashion on a free 24-hour lease. 43. Digging a massive hole in your own backyard for no reason. Your neighbors will be convinced you're either starting a cult or hiding a body. But on your own property, you can generally dig to your heart's content. It's your God-given right to thoroughly confuse your entire neighborhood. 44. Keeping a raccoon as a pet. In some states, it's surprisingly legal to own one of these furry little trash bandits. It feels profoundly wrong, like inviting chaos into your home. You're not just a pet owner. You're the landlord for a tiny masked criminal who pays rent in stolen shiny objects. 45. Fortune-telling for money. In many places, this is perfectly legal as long as you frame it as for entertainment purposes only. So you can gaze into your crystal ball and predict someone's future. You're not a scammer. You're an unlicensed therapist for the spiritually gullible. 46. Having a front yard full of flamingos, gnomes, and miscellaneous junk. While the HOA might be plotting your demise, in many places without one, there's no law against bad taste. You're not a slob. You're a curator of outsider art locked in a cold war with your neighbors. 47. Legally changing your name to something absurd. As long as you're not doing it to commit fraud, you can petition a court to change your name to Optimus Prime or Duke Fightmaster. The only thing stopping you is a small filing fee and a judge who will try very hard not to laugh in your face. 48. Changing clothes in your parked car. It feels like a one-way ticket to an indecent exposure charge. But in most cases, as long as you're not intentionally trying to be seen, it's not a crime. You're not a public menace. You're just a master of roadside wardrobe changes. 49. Eating a meal that was sent to your table by mistake. A waiter brings a fancy steak to your table. You didn't order it. Your first instinct is to guard it with your life. Legally, it's often considered an unsolicited gift. You generally have no obligation to give it back or pay for it. You're not stealing. You're just accepting a delicious gift from a very confused kitchen. 50. Starting a business under a ridiculous name. Operating a business called the Sofa King or Law and Order feels like it must violate some kind of corporate naming law. But as long as it's not misleading or infringing on a trademark, you can be as punny as you want. You're not a serious entrepreneur. You're just a master of dad jokes with an LLC. 51. Metal detecting in a public park. This feels like you're plundering public treasure, one rusty bottle cap at a time. But as long as it's not a protected historical site, it's usually perfectly legal. You're not a pirate. You're just a historian with a very annoying hobby. 52. Running a lemonade stand without a permit. Every summer, a news story about some kid's stand getting shut down goes viral, but it's almost universally ignored. It's a sacred American childhood tradition that's simply too pure for bureaucracy to ruin. 53. Taking the entire bowl of free mints from a restaurant counter. It's a power move. It feels wrong, but it's completely fine. Those mints are a free-for-all. You're not stealing. You're just asserting your dominance and ensuring you have fresh breath for the next 6 to 8 months. 54. Not separating your recycling correctly. If you accidentally toss a pizza box in with the paper, a recycling SWAT team will not descend on your house. You won't go to jail, you'll just be judged by the silent, condescending gaze of your neighbor who definitely saw you do it. 55. Singing terribly and loudly in public. As long as you're not violating a specific noise ordinance, there's no law against being a bad singer. You have a constitutional right to inflict your tone-deaf rendition of Don't Stop Believin' on everyone at the park. 56. Paying a speeding ticket with a folded-up pig drawing on it. A guy in Connecticut actually did this to protest being called a pig. The court accepted it as payment. It's a bold strategy that proves you can fight the law with pettiness, and sometimes the pettiness wins. 57. Driving a horse and buggy on a modern road. It looks like a historical reenactment that's wandered into the wrong century, but in many states, these are considered legal vehicles with the right to use the road. They're not a traffic hazard. They're just the original low-emission vehicle running on oats and pure stubbornness. 58. Using your neighbor's unsecured Wi-Fi. It feels like breaking and entering into their internet. But the laws are murky and rarely enforced for simple browsing. It's a victimless crime, right up until the moment they change the password and your Netflix binge comes to a screeching halt. 59. Leaving your shopping cart in the middle of a parking spot. This is the ultimate test of human character. It won't get you arrested, and it won't get you a ticket. But it is the single best indicator of whether a person is a functioning member of society or a complete monster. 60. Refusing to identify yourself to a police officer. Unless you are being detained under reasonable suspicion, in many states you are not required to give your name. It's your right to be uncooperative and to turn a 30-second chat into a 30-minute roadside debate club meeting. 61. Building a private shooting range in your backyard. Your neighbors might think you're preparing for the apocalypse, but in many rural counties, this is perfectly legal. As long as you have a proper backstop and follow safety rules, you can practice your aim. You're not a public menace. You're just exercising your right to make your neighbors very nervous about asking to borrow a cup of sugar. 62. Practicing amateur taxidermy. Stuffing a dead squirrel you found on the road feels like the first step in a serial killer's origin story. But in many states, as long as it's not a protected species, it's a perfectly legal hobby. You're not a monster. You're just an artist whose medium happens to be previously living creatures. 63. Claiming someone else's abandoned land through adverse possession. This is basically squatters' rights. If you openly use someone else's neglected property for a certain number of years, it varies by state, and pay the taxes on it, you can legally petition a court to become the new owner. You're not stealing land. You're just acquiring it through extreme, long-term loitering. 64. Giving your child a completely bizarre name. Naming your kid Pilot Inspector or XAA-12 feels like a form of cruelty that should be regulated. But in most states, as long as it's not an obscenity or a number, you have free reign. You're not breaking the law. You're just pre-writing your child's therapy sessions for the next 30 years. Smaushim 65. Flying a drone over someone's house. It feels like a high-tech peeping Tom and a massive invasion of privacy, but the FAA controls the airspace, and as long as you're following their rules, you can often legally fly above private property. You're not a spy, you're just a pilot with a very nosy drone. 66. Paying a tax bill entirely in $1 bills. It feels like an act of defiance, a way to stick it to the man. And it is, but the IRS is legally required to accept it. You're not a protester. You're just a person with enough free time to weaponize inconvenience. 67. Starting a micronation in your own house. You can declare your living room the Sovereign Republic of Dave, complete with a flag made from a bedsheet. The US government will completely ignore you, but they won't arrest you. As long as you still pay your taxes, you can be whatever kind of benevolent dictator you want to be. 68. Letting your house fall into complete disrepair while living in it. A home with peeling paint, boarded-up windows, and a yard full of weeds looks abandoned and illegal. But as long as it's structurally sound and not a public health hazard, there's often no law against it. You're not creating urban blight. You're just cultivating a haunted house aesthetic year-round. 69. Owning a working polygraph machine. A lie detector feels like a piece of forbidden government technology. But you can legally buy one online. You can't use its results in court, but you can use it to find out which of your kids really ate the last cookie. It's not illegal, it's just next-level parenting. 70. Setting up a massive ham radio antenna in your yard. It looks like you're trying to contact another dimension or spy on the space station. As long as it meets federal height and safety regulations, your HOA might hate it, but it's perfectly legal. You're not a spy, you're just a hobbyist with an aggressive-looking lawn ornament. 71. Burying a pet in your backyard. It seems like something you should need a permit for, involving health codes and regulations. But in most places, it's perfectly legal to lay your beloved hamster or cat to rest on your own property. It's not a health code violation, it's just your final, tear-filled home improvement project with Sparky. 72. Urban beekeeping on your rooftop. Having thousands of stinging insects in a densely populated area feels like a public menace. But in many cities, it's completely legal. You're not a supervillain. You're just a farmer harvesting anxiety from your neighbors and honey from your bees. 73. Driving with a full-sized pig in the passenger seat. As long as the animal is properly restrained and not causing a distraction, it's legal in many states. Your car might smell like a barn for the rest of its natural life, but you won't get a ticket. You're not a weirdo. You're just carpooling with your best friend. 74. Having a loud car exhaust. Your car sounds like a war zone, and every neighbor on your street wants you imprisoned. But as long as it meets the state's decibel limit, which can be surprisingly high, it's not illegal to be obnoxious. It's just a public announcement that your personality is also very, very loud. 75. Applying the finders keepers rule to money you find on the street. Pocketing a $20 bill you find on the sidewalk feels like theft. But legally, if there's no way to identify the owner, it's yours to keep. You're not stealing. You're just accepting a small anonymous grant from the concrete gods. 76. Using a radar detector in your car. This device feels like a secret weapon against the police. And while they're illegal in some states and all commercial vehicles, in many places, they are perfectly fine for passenger cars. You're not an outlaw. You're just an enthusiastic student of police patrol patterns. 77. Owning a lockpicking kit. It feels like something only a burglar would possess. But in most states, simply owning the tools is perfectly legal. It only becomes a crime when you use them or intend to use them for illegal purposes. You're not a criminal. You're just a Locksport enthusiast. 78. owning a real human skeleton. It feels ghoulish and definitely illegal. But as long as it was obtained legally and isn't part of an active police investigation, you can own one. You're not a serial killer. You're just a collector with very niche tastes. 79. Cloud seeding. Yes, you can literally try to make it rain. While you usually need a permit, the practice of shooting silver iodide into clouds to induce precipitation is a real and legal thing. It's the ultimate way to take matters into your own hands when the weatherman lets you down again. 80. Running a bad art museum in your garage. You can collect the ugliest paintings you can find and charge your friends admission. There is no law requiring art to be good. You're not a failed gallery owner. You're a celebrated curator of questionable creative choices. 81. Driving an old ice cream truck as your daily vehicle. It feels deeply wrong, like you're a villain in a horror movie, but it's just a van with a creepy paint job. You're not a public menace. You're just a person who enjoys ominous jingles and disappointing every child on your block. 82. Power washing the public sidewalk in front of your house. It feels like you're defacing city property with a high-pressure water blaster. But in most cities, keeping the sidewalk clean is actually your responsibility. You're not a vandal. You're just a champion of clean concrete. 83. Building a massive adult-sized treehouse in your yard. It looks like you're violating a dozen zoning laws and refusing to grow up. But as long as it meets building codes, it's just another structure. You're not having a midlife crisis. You're just upgrading your childhood dreams with a mortgage. 84. Staring at someone in public for an uncomfortably long time. This feels like it has to be harassment. But as long as you're not threatening or stalking them, it's usually not illegal. You're not a creep. You're just conducting a very intense, non-consensual social experiment. 85. Talking to yourself in public. Having a spirited one-person debate on a street corner looks like the opening scene of a crime documentary. But as long as you're not screaming or menacing anyone, it's not disorderly conduct. You're not a public menace. You're just workshopping your material. 86. Ignoring a "Beware of Dog" sign. That sign feels like a legal force field. But it's not. It's actually a warning that can be used against the owner in a lawsuit. You're not trespassing on sacred ground. You're just walking past a legal confession that the owner's dog is a furry little lawsuit waiting to happen. 87. Having an excessive number of cats. While there can be animal hoarding laws if the conditions are unsanitary, simply owning 25 cats in a clean house isn't inherently illegal in many places. You're not breaking the law. You're just the undisputed monarch of your own furry, chaotic kingdom. 88. Having a different political sign on your lawn for every single candidate? A yard full of conflicting signs looks like the home of a deeply confused person. But it's your First Amendment right. You're not an undecided voter. You're just a chaos agent dedicated to confusing the entire neighborhood. 89. Owning a massive collection of broken, creepy dolls. A room full of them feels like evidence in a future paranormal investigation. But there's no law against collecting things that will haunt people's dreams. You're not summoning a demon. You're just a hobbyist with very specific, very unsettling tastes. 90. Playing the bagpipes. In public. While specific noise ordinances might apply, in many places, there's no law against playing a particular, ear-splitting instrument. You're not a public nuisance, you're just a lone warrior waging a one-man war against silence and good taste. 91. Having no last name. Going through life with a single name like Cher or Prince feels fundamentally wrong and probably illegal. But many states allow for a mononym. It's a bureaucratic nightmare, but it's possible. You're not a fugitive. You're just living life on a first-name basis with the entire world. 92. Speaking with a fake accent all day, every day. It feels like some form of fraud. But as long as you're not trying to impersonate a specific person to gain an advantage, it's perfectly legal. You're not a con artist. You're just doing some very dedicated, long-term method acting. 93. Bartering for goods and services. Paying your plumber with a chicken feels like a transaction from the Dark Ages. But it's a completely legal exchange, as long as you both declare the fair market value of the chicken to the IRS. Yes, the government wants its cut of your poultry payment. 94. Starting your own religion. You can legally create the first Church of the Holy Donut in your garage. As long as you follow the rules, it can even be tax-exempt. You're not a cult leader. You're just a spiritual entrepreneur who has seen the tax-free light. 95. Wearing a full suit of armor in public. It seems like you should be stopped for something. But in most places, it's not illegal. You're not a threat. You're just someone who takes dressing for the occasion to a completely illogical extreme, whether you're going to the grocery store or a job interview. 96. Flying a flag that you designed yourself. A strange, unfamiliar flag on a flagpole looks weirdly official and probably illegal. But you can fly any personal flag you want, as long as it's not obscene. You're not a rogue state, you're just a vexillologist of your own sovereign one-person nation. 97. Using someone else's photo that you found online in a meme. It feels like theft or defamation. But unless you're using it for commercial purposes or it falls under specific privacy laws, creating a meme is often covered by fair use. You're not a content thief. You're just an unlicensed internet comedian. 98. Pretending to be a vampire. Yes, there are communities of people who live this lifestyle. It's not illegal to sleep in a coffin and drink. Well, whatever it is they drink. You're not breaking the law. You're just deeply committed to a very specific, very pale subculture. 99. Sitting in a restaurant and not ordering anything. It feels like trespassing on their business. But as long as they don't ask you to leave, you're not breaking the law. You're not a criminal. You're just a non-paying customer testing the limits of their hospitality. 100. Attending a city council meeting and just complaining for the entire allotted time about anything you want. It feels like you should be escorted out, but it's your right. You're not a crank. You're a concerned citizen participating enthusiastically in local democracy. 101. Keeping the change if a cashier gives you too much back. Your conscience screams that it's theft, but legally, once the transaction is complete, the money is yours. It's a moral test, not a legal one. You're not a thief. You're just the beneficiary of someone else's bad day at math. So there you have it. 101 reasons why America isn't just a country. It's a legal minefield of hilarious loopholes, baffling statutes, and things you were sure would get you arrested but won't. The line between weird and criminal is thinner and stranger than you ever imagined. But now it's your turn. What's the most illegal thing you've done that you were shocked to find out was perfectly legal? Or even better, what's something that is legal but absolutely shouldn't be? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear the stories. And if you enjoyed this journey into legal insanity, destroy that like button and subscribe for more dives into the wonderfully weird.